Hi, I'm Dr. Matt B, and these are your emotional minutes, and welcome back. And I was actually just laying here in bed trying to get to sleep, and actually having some difficulty getting to sleep. And it made me realize this is actually a great idea for an episode, because a lot of people really do have a lot of trouble getting to sleep. And it can be really difficult, especially during times of stress, work stress, family stress, life stress, things like a pandemic, for example, or other stressors or just for some people it's continuous. Now, difficulty getting to sleep in the first place at the beginning of the night, or difficulty getting back to sleep after you might wake up in the middle of the night, or even waking up much earlier than you had expected or hoped and not being able to get back to sleep in the morning, can all really constitute forms of insomnia. The good news is that there are actually structured behavioral methods or strategies that people can use to help get better sleep. Now, a lot of these strategies really involve a more long-term approach. So, for example, they may not work after the first night or the first couple nights, but when people tend to stick with them over a number of days or a number of weeks, they tend to really take hold. And so the first set of strategies we typically talk about really involve a couple key initial strategies that people try to integrate into their routines. So the first initial strategy is really not taking naps. The next thing is really to make sure that you don't have any caffeine after the early afternoon, so whether that's like 1 or 2 o'clock. The last initial strategy is really trying as best as you can to not use bed to be a place where you think. Or think through the stressors of your day. They say that bed should be used just for the 3 S's. So that's sleep, sick, and sex. So one way to really counteract this is to actually find a place somewhere in your house, like a comfortable chair that's away from your bed, and really use that as a place before you go to bed in the evening to really just sit and just sort of let your mind wander, let your thoughts wander, and really go wherever they want. So those were the initial strategies that we try to integrate. Now, then there's a couple key strategies. Now, one of the things that can really get in the way of someone's desire to fall asleep is really a tendency to always be kind of thinking about how much they need to sleep, or how bad things might be if they won't fall asleep. And then the things that they'll have to face the next day and how they might be less effective at work or with other people, and really sort of telling yourself that you should or you need to sleep or you've got to get to sleep for all of these reasons, interestingly enough, actually gets in the way of the body's tendency to fall asleep on its own. The body wants to go to sleep, especially after a certain point in the day. So a number of these strategies actually focus on sort of counteracting or getting away from that process. So the first is really, if you're sitting there in bed really trying to will yourself or tell yourself that you've got to get back to sleep, is actually trying to stay awake. So laying in bed and really trying to make yourself stay awake. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, but interestingly enough, what it does is, again, it shifts your attention away from that thought process of telling yourself, hey, I've got to sleep, I've got to sleep. That actually naturally gets in the way of your body's ability to naturally sleep on its own. So another key strategy that we use is really checking in with your thoughts about sleep. A lot of times people will really sort of believe that they really, really need a certain amount of sleep to sort of completely function. But what that can do is that can lead us to sort of toss and turn and really be thinking so much about how we need sleep that that thought process actually gets in the way of our body's tendency to naturally fall asleep on its own. So one classic example of this is sort of looking at your clock and really thinking, oh man, I've only got a couple more hours to sleep, and then you keep continuously looking at your clock and thinking about how much sleep you're not going to get and how it's going to affect your day the next day. And really sort of looking at those beliefs for accuracy. Will it be the worst thing if you don't get that many hours of sleep? A lot of times people actually function with not much sleep, unless you're sort of running a marathon or completing the math section of the SATs. Really, most people can actually get through their day the way they need to without much sleep. Another key strategy that I often tell people is really don't lay in bed and toss and turn, really sort of willing yourself or making yourself try to get back to sleep. And so one of the things that can be done for this is if you actually don't fall asleep within 20 minutes after attempting to sleep, is really actually just get up and get out of bed and try to find sort of a relaxing activity to do. Something like doing a craft in your home, or reading up on the internet about something you're interested in, or reading a book, say, that you've been meaning to read. As you start to engage in an activity that you might have some interest in, that's sort of a calmer activity, your body actually starts to sort of naturally want to go to sleep. And hopefully that was helpful tonight, talking about a number of strategies to help yourself get to sleep. Now, if you're interested in this topic even more and you want to learn more about it and really get some more detail on a number of these strategies, there's two books that I really recommend. One is Say Goodnight to Insomnia, which is actually written by the developer and the researcher who established these methods into a therapy. And then the other is actually a similar book, but it actually has a workbook component if you like to sort of work along and write things down. I'm going to go ahead and try a couple of these things now, maybe get to this book that my neighbor recommended that I've been meaning to read, to really help my body sort of naturally want to get back to sleep on its own. So again, I'm Dr. Matt B., and these are your Emotional Minutes, and we'll see you next time.